one of the only things that people in the U.S., and correct me if I'm wrong, can do without renouncing their citizenship is they can change states. So that will change their state taxes, or there's this thing that may not exist in the future, which is Puerto Rico. What's going on there? Because I know that you've got your Logan Pauls and a bunch of people who have these massive earning years and have chosen to reside in Puerto Rico, where my understanding is it's very low tax in Puerto Rico, almost none.
From 0 to 4, depending on what you're doing. And it's so there's a couple of things you can do. Obviously, you can move states, which to me is kind of like people say, oh, I don't want to move overseas. The kids have to change schools. Well, if you move from California to Arizona, they're still changing schools. And I would argue moving from like New York to somewhere in the South, I mean, that's more of a demographic or more of a psychographic change than moving to Ireland, for example, where you could get a low tax deal. But okay, fine. You can change states. You can live overseas and you can pay something. I mean, you could pay between 0 and 10%, for example. You're going to have some more restrictions, and it's going to be a pain if you're living in, let's say, Europe, where they have some taxes and there's treaties, and you got to like flesh out what goes where. It's a bit of a hassle. It's probably easier to go to.
Is that true without giving up citizenship? I was under the impression that you had a fixed federal rate no matter where you lived in the world if you were a U.S. citizen. Am I incorrect there?
So what a crypto person or an investor or someone with royalties would do, perhaps, is they might want to go to Puerto Rico. If you're like me and you run a business, I lived overseas for years as an American, and I paid 0 or close to 0 because I used my personal foreign earned income exclusion. But then, so you can take a salary from your own business. Your business is overseas. There's restrictions on what that business can do, which is why like one of my homes is owned by an old company I have. Nobody understands it. In the company jurisdiction, in the real estate jurisdiction, I'm like, it was for U.S. tax purposes. So I was able to pay 0. Now it's a bit more complicated, but you can pay 0 or single digits or 10 potentially, and some people can still pay 0. And I probably would have been able to still pay 0. It's just, to me, it was just like, you guys are going to keep making my life more complicated. I don't even want to live in your country. I'm kind of embarrassed to be from your country. I'm done. But yeah, you can live. I mean, if you live in Dubai as an American, you can probably get your tax rate to 10% or below. If you just want to go to Puerto Rico, now you have to spend most of your time away. So Puerto Rico allows you to get it closer to half. And it's also better for like investors, whereas the living overseas is you have a business. So if you're a stock trader, a Bitcoin guy, whatever, that's not really going to work very well. That's where renouncing comes in. Or if you're just like, I don't want to pay anything at all, which is not most people. Most people, to keep U.S. citizenship, if they like it, they'll pay 5% or something, right? Even though they think it's not fair. So the renunciation, give up your citizenship, it depends. I mean, if you are British or Irish or Australian, you're probably going to be able to come back and visit. They're probably not going to give you a hard time. If you're a Caribbean citizen where you just bought the passport for $100,000, they might look askance at you when you go to apply for a visa. That said, people have come back with those passports. So, it's moving states, then it's Puerto Rico, then it's living offshore for the majority of the year, whereas Puerto Rico might be 6-7 months. And then it's, if you just want to be totally done with it all, it's renunciation. The U.S., by the way, is the only country, effectively, we're starting to see more. Australia's kind of flirting with it, where you can't just leave. If you're Irish and you're just like, hey, next year I'm going to spend fewer than 30 days, that resets your clock, your resident status is out, you're done, you're our citizen, but you don't owe us any money. So the U.S. is unique in that regard. And so I think it's kind of, when people say, oh, like you just don't want to pay, oh, like some of the people saying that are the British expats living in Dubai not paying. It's like, wait a second, you have a better situation, right? But that's what you can do.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that these loopholes, let's call it Puerto Rico, because I know that whatever's happening in the IRS, they're not hoping that a bunch of multimillionaire influencers go locate themselves in Puerto Rico and stop paying taxes. Do you think that sort of thing is going to be closed anytime soon?
I will say this. And maybe people in the audience or my audience won't like me for saying this, but we work, as a general contractor, we work with a lot of tax attorneys and CPAs to deliver the work when it comes to putting things on letterheads, et cetera. And I think I buy into what most of them believe, which is the IRS, their job is to enforce the tax law. I don't think the IRS has an issue. Maybe the IRS commissioner or political appointee, but the IRS, if you follow the rules, you get the benefits. Now, the politicians, on the other hand, do they want people moving to Puerto Rico? No. I would argue if the U.S. is a country of the rule of law, I mean, it's going to go on for a number of more years. What happens after that? I mean, obviously they're pushing for Puerto Rico statehood. Obviously, some of the Puerto Ricans don't like it. It's like, wait a second, your place was falling apart. I mean, this money was supposed to be, to help, because they are paying something. You have to pay yourself a salary and pay normal tax on that, and pay 4%. I mean, people are still paying something down there, generally speaking. I think eventually they will get rid of it. I'd like to think that they're not going to just like upend it, but who knows? If they just totally got rid of it, I would say you have no rule of law because it was like here are the terms of the deal. Eventually, that kind of stuff will
Hmm.
probably go away. The Elizabeth Warrens and whomever else it is, they don't like you having options. Which again, I mean, the one thing the U.S. has is it has entrepreneurs. People tell me from Canada, from Australia, we have tall poppy syndrome, as you said. In the US, they say it's still better. Now, for me, I had this innate extreme drive. I said, I don't really care where I'm at. I'll just do it there, tall poppy or not. But that whole thing is built on competition. Why shouldn't people have Why shouldn't there be competition for where to live? Like, if people don't want to live there, I mean, I saw Gavin Newsom, governor of California, recently saying, maybe it's a badge of honor that people start their businesses here and then move them somewhere else. Like we incubated them.
Hmm.
And that's a fair point. I think he did a decent interview. I think it was with Sean Hannity. But then he loses me when he's like, you should have to pay the piper forever. I mean, I paid plenty to the IRS. I paid more than most people. Most people complaining because they paid their $800 this year. Believe me, I was paying a lot more than $800. And now I no longer use the services. I don't know why we don't encourage that competition, but I think that they don't see it that way because the average person, there's a jealousy, which again, I just don't, I mean, people in general are jealous, but I think that there's perhaps more of a willingness in some of these other countries to say, yeah, we need some cash. Bring those people in.